Steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, back with another video. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment if you can. We're going to look at this 1964 Lincoln Continental. This is a sedan. You can see here on the screen that it is on eBay. I haven't done a lot of reviews on eBay simply because there haven't been a lot of these cars that I typically review on the platform. A lot of it is now on Bring a Trailer. So what I want to do is go ahead and go through what I put together. I'm recording this on March 19th of 2024, hence the date that you see there. We know for 64, if you take a look at my chart that I created, there were 32,969 sedans built for the 64 model year. That was basically mid-August until a little after mid-July of 64. Now, I did take this screenshot just a few moments ago. I'm a Haggerty customer. You can see the concourse price for a sedan goes north of 52 or 50,000, and then of course the fair condition has increased at 14,700. Now, we're going to jump back over in just a moment to the eBay listing, but here's what we have. The serial number there is that 4Y number. The listing basically doesn't have a lot, and this is one reason why I do like Bring a Trailer, because they kind of handhold, I think, the owners and the sellers a little bit to give them enough information to kind of paint a picture, a story, if you will, of said car. But basically, what this person goes on to say is they purchased it from the original owner. It's pretty much what they're saying, 100% original, except for, of course, a new gas tank and a new carb. They do have the original title. They go on to say the car does run, but it's going to need a lot because it's been sitting since 1998. The brakes are going to have to be gone through. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of stuff we'll talk about. The glass does not have any cracks. The power locks are slow. The driver power window is the only one working at the moment. Original carpet, and so on and so forth. Now, what I want to do is I want to take a look back here at some of the photos, and then we'll talk about some of the pros and cons. I'll try to keep this one as efficient as possible, although I do love, of course, talking about these Lincolns. What we can see here from the front is a 64, obviously very sought-after year. We can see there is a dent, ding, whatever you want to call it, right there in the bumper. It kind of has that oxidized paint, what I sometimes will refer to as a patina type look and feel, very similar to my 64, and if you have been watching this channel for a while, you know I do like these kind of original untouched cars in many ways. What we're seeing here is obviously some a little ding or dent here. We can see it does have the wheel covers, aka hubcaps. There's a little bit of rust wanting to pop out here. We'll see a little bit more on the other side. And then, of course, I like to look at the dog leg here, which is this area. And, from this angle, it doesn't look too bad. Here we can see the the rear of the car. Again, you see that patina kind of feel on the paint. A lot of times this can be polished out if that's something you want to do. Of course, I think most people would end up painting the car. What we can see here is it does have a trailer hitch. That's a very rare option that was available. And, sometimes these are aftermarket. Sometimes it was like a Ford product number. I own one myself. That's how I know. But it's kind of cool, especially if you want to put a camper or a small vintage boat behind your Lincoln. We can see there are some dents and dings here in these bumper inserts, very minor in the grand scheme of things. I do sell these inserts in billet aluminum, and then I also sell a sticker kit that goes on the billet aluminum as well. From pretty much there, the other thing I look at here, and this will be key because there is one short video where the car is running and there's no one in the car. I always talk about the importance of not doing that. The reason being is these cars can kind of fall into reverse with the shifter. It's not just a Lincoln thing, that's a Ford thing. And if you recall, I've talked about in the past, you want to look at this bumper area right here where I'm highlighting. If you can see the mouse, you want to make sure there's no dent or ding there, because that's typically where, if somebody's not paying attention, the car falls into reverse and it, goes back and maybe hits the curb or hits, a parking block or something like that, that's behind. It's hard to tell. It doesn't look like there's a crack here. Yeah, there actually is. There's a crack there in the reverse light, so you can get these reverse lights from people, but that's a part that you'd want to replace, so to speak. Here we can see on the driver's side, you've got a little bit of the rust coming through above the rear wheel well. The dog leg doesn't look too bad, and we can see it has the door moldings, these little protective items here. That was a dealer add-on. So a little bit better photo here, kind of showing some of the potential, rabbit hole that you could go down. Anytime there's rust, you want to be, careful. You just never know sometimes how far this stuff will go. Here we could see a little bit of blemishes. It's hard to tell if just the paint was messed up and it's a little bit of, rust or kind of patina kind of showing through there. And of course, you've got the Continental script. Inside the car, we can see it is an AC car. That's because if this was a non-AC car, these vents would not be here. The heat would only come out underneath the dash. But rest assured, this is an air-conditioned car. We can see it does look like it has just the AM radio. It does not have the Autronic Eye, which is the headlight dimmer. And we can see, for the most part, everything looks complete, which is kind of a key thing. 89,000 miles or so, which I believe the listing did say. Here we can see the back window. And what I'm kind of looking at here is, even on my 64, a lot of times this up here is going to be pretty bad off with the paint. Mine's kind of peeling as well. Over the course of time, water will collect there in that little river, if you will, and whatnot if this car was not kept inside. Here is a little bit of a concern. Obviously, you're starting to see some rust. I mean, if you had, eyes on this in person and you had a screwdriver, or maybe you were kind of feeling with your finger, you'd be able to kind of tell, like, is this just right here? But again, seeing where this is coming from and seeing on the outside, I would definitely be a little skeptical. I would want to make sure, is this contained to a particular area? I would want to also look underneath the doors. You can kind of see here a little bit. But typically underneath the doors, if they're rusted out and things like that, it can get very costly. We're seeing here it has the biscuit style interior, which you don't see as much, which I think looks good. And we can see from here, I do like, again, you don't see the seat pattern a lot. But I like the interior color, and although it may look a little bit dirty and things like that, a lot of times you can get in here and clean up this carpet, and you'd be amazed just a weekend how nice this could potentially look. This looks like it's got a little bit of the moldish type stuff here, depending on the environment this car's been in. If it's been kind of sitting outside, that can happen. But again, I watch a lot of different people that detail these cars or cars that have been sitting a long time, and they can make them look really good, especially with steam cleaning the carpet. Here we get a good view of the dash. You can see where the original, this is where the nameplate would have been. You'll see this sometimes on these Lincolns where the dealership basically put a nameplate after so-and-so purchased it. We can see it has a heel pad right here, which is factory, so that means the carpet has never been changed, more than likely. It has the log, it has the owner's manual. To my amazement, you don't always see this, but the original jack is in here with the instructions. This looks like a kind of an ice scraper of some sort. This is a good photo we want to see underneath, but we also want to look up in these corners. So in 64, this weather stripping moves from the deck lid down to this area here. And a lot of times with leaves and water and things like that, it will collect in here, and this can be an area of concern. This doesn't look too bad in here from what we can see, as long as there's never been any kind of body work, so to speak. Underneath these deck lids, you've heard me talk a lot about how, due to the adhesive that was used, apparently these deck lids will collect moisture, and you can kind of see the remnants of some of it. This is by far not bad. We've seen some pretty horrible ones. Really, the tell is often on the outside of the deck lid to kind of see, are there holes already forming? But a lot of times this is either going to need to be dipped, or someone's going to have to take it off the car and really clean it up to kind of really remedy and get rid of that stuff. In Florida, we have a ton of moisture, and I can tell you the deck lids in Florida just do not fare well with as much moisture as there is. You could see here kind of an original trunk. It does look like we have some extra parts potentially, which I would love to look inside this and see what's there. But to see a sedan with all of that original kind of carpet, although this may be dingy, you could obviously buy a Jim Wallace carpet kit and replace all of this. You've got what they kind of often refer to as the toilet seat. Here, this kind of flaps up so you can unscrew and take the spare tire out. If you did not know, this is where the spare tire sits in 64 and 65. And, you know, a lot of times if it's ever been swapped out, it just kind of resides down here. But this is technically where it sits on the sedans. You can see here the headliner, one of the better parts of the car. I think like this is a good photo, kind of just showing you how nice all this stuff is. Love the originality, and I would say it would be great to kind of keep it that way. Now, what I want to do as I start to wrap this video up is just kind of go back to the presentation here. It was not in the Lincoln registry. I went ahead and submitted it with a link to the eBay listing, so he will get that added. The VIN number, you can see at the top there. I apologize, it's slightly cut off. But 4Y82N. So this is broken down as, of course, the number 4 is the year, so 64. Y is the assembly plant. These were all built in Wixom, Michigan. 82 is the body style, which is the sedan. N is the engine code, which these are all the MEL, which is Mercury Etzel Lincoln. So MEL 430. The last digits, as I've kind of reinforced to everyone, the last 6 digits, it always begins, or the last characters rather, I'll just leave it at that. It always begins with a 4. So the last, in this case, 5, so 26,809. It was the 26,809th built for that model year. There were 36,297 total units built, not including the limos, which there were 15 of those. So kind of just keeping that separate for this video. There is not a VIN plate, so there's nothing to decode there. So it would tell us the factory color, the factory interior, and a few things like that. Unfortunately, again, with eBay, I've been on eBay for over 20 years, but I think Bring a Trailer is just a place to go, and they would have asked the seller for that. Pros of the listing, it's a complete car. It's almost all original from what they're telling us. It does run per the seller, so if you were picking it up, you could more than likely start it, hopefully, and drive it on a trailer. It is an AC car. It has a 1 or 2 ownership, so basically I think this is the second owner, and there is an original title. Some of the key callouts, I would be very careful with how much rust could be under this vehicle, right? So as you've seen me talk about or heard me talk about in the past, there's no photos underneath this car, so we don't know how bad is it, right? The car sitting, or any car sitting for 25 plus years, especially a Lincoln, is going to need everything. So no matter which way you slice and dice it, you could say, hey, Jay, how do you know it needs everything? Listen, any car that's sat that long, more than likely it's going to need brake lines. It's going to need, the brakes are going to have to be gone through. Sure, you could argue and say, well, it has a new gas tank. Well, when was that changed? Were the fuel lines changed? A lot of that stuff, and it's going to add up, which is really my last bullet point. Will the restoration combined with the sale price of this car be equal or less than what the car is worth? That's something you have to keep in mind. Or would you be upside down? Now, if you were going to buy this car and resto mod it, for instance, you might say, hey, I just want a good, solid 64 body. Okay, well then get underneath this car and see what it looks like, right? Make sure that it's not rusted out underneath the car. The person says in the listing that it has typical rust for a Midwest car, like typical, I forget the word they used. It says has standard rust that would be expected for a Midwest car, has some rust in the rear jambs and underside as well. I think the price, if this car was it didn't have any rust, I don't think the price is that far off, because you go, wow, it's a lot for a sedan, but the prices have went up over time. I've just showed you where they're almost $15,000 for a sedan. But being that this car might need a lot of rust repair, it might be too far gone for someone to buy this and put 30 grand in it and go, wow, now I got a $40,000 or $50,000 car. You could have maybe started with a $25,000 or $30,000 sedan and kind of been ahead of the game. So those are some of the things you got to think about. Let me know what you think. Do you think this car is worth $11,500? Sound off in the comments. Thank you for the support, ODB. We're out of here.